Cool place. What's it called? Where are we?
Are we rolling?
You always ask me that. You know I give you the same answer. We're always rolling.
We're always rolling. Okay.
We are currently sitting further apart than we would like to be. I think one more seat over would be the preferred arrangement.
I would prefer that, but your people said not to come too close to you or to look at you in the eye.
It's not true. I'm not the one who shifted seats, but we can talk about that another time.
They said look at him like just below the neckline.
I convinced my friend once to greet Jared Leto like that, and I almost let him get away with the whole thing. It was going to be so awkward. I told him I'd set this whole thing up, like don't go, like don't look him in the eye, don't call him Jared, don't went deep, like 6 things you don't do.
Yes.
He was so terrified. I had to let him off the hook just before, but it would have been a great moment if I'd gone through with it.
That's funny because I looked at Jared in the eye once and he punched me in the nose. Said don't ever do that again.
But we're in a beautiful location. This is awesome. I love this. This is like a wonderful little boutique kind of bespoke theater environment in Los Angeles. It's called the Playhouse.
This is called the Playhouse, yeah.
Why are we here?
We're here because you wanted to speak to me.
I did, yeah.
Or I wanted to speak to you.
Or both.
I think it works both ways.
It does.
And we're here. We actually are currently trying to make this theatre nice again. We've got a cap which says MTTNA. It's a red
Make
cap.
this theatre nice again.
Yes, the cap.
It's not catchy
And it's
at
we're
all.
hoping it'll catch on across the country.
Not likely.
Because it's going to be for us, but also for like young people,
Yeah.
theatre programs, and like any kind of events. But right now, of course, there's no one in it because that's the same in every theatre in the world.
It's really cool. It's a really cool space. But I guess I'm surprised. I wasn't sure that you were in the sort of like make this theatre nice again business.
Yes. Well, no, I wouldn't call it a business. Just the one theatre.
Yeah. For now.
Yeah.
Might catch the
But
bug.
no. So for the time being, we get to rehearse and do interviews in here, and it's exciting to have somewhere that eventually will hopefully be good for the whole community.
Yeah, for sure. Rehearse for what? I mean, I know now there's performances that are coming up. You know, there's a Brit Awards performance.
Yes.
There's a live stream you've got planned. How is all that working out? Because right now we have this new song, right? Higher Power, we're going to talk about that. But you're diving straight back into performance again. So how does it feel to sort of get the band back together and play this new song? And yeah.
Well, I just came back from rehearsing with everybody, and it was just so... I think that one thing that this whole time has given all of us is an extra gratitude for the job itself.
Yeah.
The fact that we can go to work together, even that is amazing.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's part of us that was rehearsing, like, why? We're rehearsing to play to nobody. But I think there's just for me personally, I just so grateful to be playing in a band, in that band, in our band. So, it's funny, within the band there's a sort of a mild frustration at not quite knowing when we might be able to do what we're really here to do and play for people, but also a deep gratitude and joy in the thing itself.
Yeah. You said something really interesting about the need to take breaks as well, and I wonder kind of like an enforced break for everyone last year. Yeah. Everyone sort of needed to figure things out personally and on their own terms and deal with the challenges ahead, and it was this huge micro global pandemic that affected billions of people in a micro way. So, you know, in terms of like your plans last year as Coldplay, were there any, or did it sort of fit into that need to regroup and make something new and try new things?
Well, that's a good question, Zane. Actually, we just before COVID, we had done an album called Everyday Life. Correct. Which we were never going to tour for a couple of reasons. One, environmental, and one, just that it felt like some of those songs might not feel quite right in amongst certain other songs. It felt like its own thing. And so this last year, we were always supposed to be making the thing that we're making at the moment. So we were very lucky like that. But because it was so difficult to get together, and because we always work a bit separately and a bit together, we've done that for a long time, and it's really great. So the basic pattern of it was normal, but the gratitude for it was quadrupled because of
psychology
suddenly
changed,
it was so difficult to find a country that we could all go to for a bit.
Yeah.
You know, that would let us all in. to record. But we were able to in some funny places, but always in like a bubble and always, all the rules and everything.
Everyday Life, it's a beautiful body of work. It's a conceptual work in terms of, sunrise, sunset. It's an album that sort of, to me, having listened to it a lot now, walks two different paths at the same time. One being calling some things out, getting involved in the conversation, diving in there, being unafraid. The other one being this yearning for connection. That's what I got out of the album as a whole. Why did you make that album? What inspired that album?
Okay, man. Well, I'm going to say something, I love you, so I'll tell you the truth. So I think that after our last tour, we got to a place of, well, in fact, for the last sort of 8 years, it's just been following the muse more and more purely. Like, I don't know how to explain it other than when you close your eyes, you're just sort of told what to do. And as the last tour was finishing, in fact, on the last morning, this song arrived in the hotel room in Buenos Aires that I recorded on my phone, and that phone recording is on Everyday Life because that sort of was the spirit of it. And it just seemed like we wanted to make a record about what people are going through on Earth. What is it like to be a human? And then some of those people are other people that we see, and some of those songs are about my feelings about things or what I'm going through. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the song applies to other people and to you. And there's a lot of, unless you hide in a hole right now, there's so many questions about how should I be as a human? How can I contribute rather than detract?
Yeah.
And it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, you say, well, if we play a big show and people are happy, that's great. But then on the same time, you got there by using loads of fuel. Or, if you're 4 white English people with a mouthpiece, that's great. But also, there's no diversity within our band. How do we deal with that? That's not necessarily our fault. That's, we met where we met in the part of England where
But you're asking the right questions.
Yeah, but it's not even that we know the answers. It's that I think that album is about just acknowledging that there's so much we don't know on Earth and everywhere else. But thanks for listening to me. I sort of felt like no one would listen to it because it felt extremely personal in a strange way, even though it's about loads of other people.
Yeah, I love I loved it. I love it because I feel when I press play on it, from the minute that it starts, from Sunrise, which is the most beautifully orchestrated composition, it's incredible. Did you write that on piano?
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
I wrote my part on piano, and then Dav, who we often do strings with, this guy Davide Rossi, this Italian mad person who we love to bits. He had played me some music by a guy called Arvo Part, or it's spelled Arvo Part, this composer. And he said, and I played him this piece, he said, Arvo Part would put this interval as the harmony. And so he played that harmony on the violin, and that's when it became what it became.
Yeah, beautiful.
So it's like all our things, it's ultimately teamwork.
Yeah, and that's what it sounded like. It sounded like a record that you needed to make as a band for yourselves. Maybe that's what you mean by you're not sure if anyone else was going to hear it, because it doesn't. It just felt quite vicarious. Is it possible that album, you could have not even put that album out, and it still would have resonated with you in the right way? It would have been an important process to go through.
Yeah, no, exactly. We had to do it, had to make it.
Yeah.
But then we wanted to put it out because we liked
it. It's
it.
really good. Also said a lot of really interesting things that I think in a weird way that album could have come out in 2020 and resonated in a very acute way. Because there's a lot of things that were being said on that record that kind of almost foreshadowed a lot of what we ended up kind of experiencing as humanity to some degree, which does happen, the foreshadowing in art.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know how to speak to that. I don't know how.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you listened to it since we've gone into quarantine, and does it sit different for you?
I don't. I think we might have talked about this over the years. I don't listen to things really after they're done because it's too difficult. It's also, if I listened to it and thought it was amazing, I don't know how healthy that would be for my ego. And if I listened to it the most normal thing is I think it's awful. It's the same as when you hear your voice on an answering machine, or
Right.
do you listen back to your show every day?
No.
Right. You should, because it's really good. But
Thanks.
it'll be a different experience for you.
It's a very good point. I've never thought of it that way. I've never flipped it into a different environment. But that being said, at some point you have to love it enough to let it go.
Yeah, that's really true. And I always love playing and singing the songs that we've released. For example, we have a song called The Scientist. When we first did that, I thought it was amazing, the recording. But now if I hear it, I just feel like, oh, this is awful. But then if we're playing the song, we were just rehearsing last week. I'm like, oh, I love, it's so nice to get into the song. I think maybe it's partly because while you're working on something, you're really inside those clothes. And then as soon as you give it to the world, a mannequin fills those clothes. You're not inside the song anymore unless you're playing it live.
So do you think there are songs on Everyday Life that you're excited to play now? I know you didn't want to tour that record, but are there ones that have risen to the surface? I mean, Orphans being an obvious selection, but...
I don't think that will make it into the next
Oh, you are
tour.
kidding me.
Yeah.
Come on, you're toying with me. That's such an incredible song.
Yeah, but you haven't heard our new songs.
That's true.
No, I think they're so of a certain colour, those songs, and I don't know, we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
we might as well be talking about La La Cuckoo Land, because a set list is it's an imaginary thing right now.
At the minute, but it definitely feels like that energy is starting to shift. I think with some sensible behavior within society, we might get there sooner rather than later. Let's talk a little bit about the song. I want to talk about Higher Power. This is one of my favorite songs you've ever recorded.
Hey, really?
Really.
You say that to all the girls.
No, I really mean it. This song, you wrote it on guitar?
No, it came on a kitchen sink, a bathroom sink. Like.
Started with the beat.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And then the title Higher Power had been around for a while, and if you go on my phone, there's like 15 abandoned Higher Powers
Power.
that aren't that good.
Demos.
And then...
Voice notes.
Voice notes, yeah. And then it just dropped through that song.
It just landed.
On a keyboard that my friend's friend lent me because of where we were staying, and there wasn't a piano. So I was super grateful.
You tapped into it.
Well, yes, I think with good songs, at least they are just like their own things that you happen to catch.
How do you know when they're there?
Because you just know that it's nothing to do with you.
No, but how do you know when to apply yourself from whatever you were doing that very second and switching that into needing to drum something and sing along to it? Like, what is the moment that goes from I'm reading a book, now I'm not reading a book, I'm writing a song? How do you know?
Well, that's a really good question, Zane. I have a deal with myself. It took a while to negotiate it, but we came to an agreement. But to say that if anything comes calling, you have to go and do it.
Immediately.
Whatever it is. And most of it is not that good. I think that we've been very blessed to have some songs that some people like over the years, largely through tenacity and perseverance, because there's thousands of ideas that don't even make it past the drumming department.
Right, yeah.
But a song like Higher Power, there's probably, in our whole catalogue, there's probably 15 songs where that's happened, where it basically just lands.
Why do a lot of drummers that I've met in varying bands seem to have a very high bar? Larry Mullen Jr.
Yeah, Larry does.
Very hard to get something that's not incredible past him. I know you all do, but I feel like drummers to some degree have this thing about them.
First of all, Will physically is like Ferdinand the Friendly Bull. What's it called, that movie?
Yes.
So I think there's a movie about a bull. Everyone's scared of him, but he's really sweet.
Yeah.
And that's what Will, I'm scared of Will. And he loves me.
Yeah.
But even yesterday, I had to speak to Johnny, our guitarist. I was like, I think Will might be mad at me. And John's like,
You
no.
didn't really ask that question after how many years of
25.
creative marriage?
25.
Wow, and you're still like, I think he's
because
upset.
sometimes he has a look that you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Most bands are only successful really because of their chemistry. None of us are virtuosos, none of us, except Matt Bellamy, but most, or Mark Knopfler. There are a bunch.
Justin Vernon.
Yes, okay, there's a load of them. But in a band like ours, it's the only unique thing we have is our chemistry and that balance of that chemistry. And yesterday I was reading about Jason and the Argonauts. And of course, when they were assembling that crew to go and get the golden fleece, they had to have a person that does this and a person that does that and a person that's good at this and a band is like that. And Will, for us, is like an anchor. And I'd say probably Larry and you too is like an anchor, because you might have a front man and or a guitarist who's, we want to play
you're often
Marshmallow Castles.
Yeah, you're in La La Land.
So someone has to sort of say, okay, great, we can go to the Marshmallow Castle, but let's, do the planning properly.
Yeah.
And Will is that for us, and we would be completely screwed without him.
Higher Power feels like it's a Marshmallow Castle record, though. It's like pop music on steroids. It's incredible. It's like got that sort of like modern love beat, and the whole thing just feels like this crazy, like joyous dance through the fields. And so when you demo that and then it comes back to the band, is that one of those ones where everyone's like, yes, great?
Yeah, actually, Will said, I really like this. That's what I was like, And that was our first session all together with Max Martin.
Right.
All together at that early stage.
Yeah.
And so I sent them the demo, and then they started working on it. And Will texted me and said, "This is going to be really good."
Yeah, it's awesome.
Which is I've had that maybe twice.
What was the other time?
Viva la Vida.
Yeah, which is also good.
Yeah.
I want to, before we get into Max Martin, I want to trace it back to me, the origin of what I consider sort of your 3.0. So 4.0, like Parachutes being an album within itself. To me, you've done nothing that sounds anything like that ever since. And it's
Not a whole album, no.
No, and it's this beautiful kind of like document of the band in this wonderful naive space, but the songs and the production is so fucking awesome. And then from there, it got adventurous pretty quick, right? It was like, all right, cool, like we know what we're capable of. That's your 2.0. 3.0 being sort of Viva la Vida into Milo Xyloto and all that. But around that time, you started to dance with pop music in a really big way.
Yeah.
And in particular, up-tempo pop music, Avicii Rest His Soul being a very early collaborator in that space. And the experimentation, there's a question coming, I promise, but the experimentation that you began to do at that time, which seemed to lifelong Coldplay fans to be, wait, who are they with?
Yeah.
Now makes total sense. At the time, what inspired you to want to make these changes?
Okay, I have two answers to that. It's a really great question. I think that every artist is completely intertwined with what's happening culturally and what's happening technologically around them. So when the delay pedal came through, whoever invented that, then you had all these amazing delay pedal records. So we've existed in the band concurrently with the barriers between types of music coming down.
Correct.
Which is for us is the biggest blessing in the world.
Yeah.
When we started, it was like you're a white indie band, and this is urban radio and this is alternative radio and basically old-fashioned racist statements. And so of course we fit in a box at the beginning, and then right now in 2021, everyone's doing everything, and you can like Olivia Rodrigo as much as you like AC/DC, and no one thinks that's weird. And that's musical utopia for me. And you can also listen to Olivia Rodrigo and then listen to something recorded 70 years ago. It's miraculous. So why would you want to stay in one box? Plus, we did that, and it still exists. Yeah. It's not like I always feel for chefs, because they make this amazing thing and then someone eats it. Yeah. But no one ate Parachutes. It's still there. So there's that. There's the coming down of the barriers, and the fact that when you've made something, it remains. Then I would say that when we made that first record, I was 23 and had a lot more insecurities and a lot less life lived. And over time, for one reason or another, from experience, from seeking out certain teachers, from watching other people work, from studying Bruce Springsteen or looking at Michael Jackson or Nina Simone or anyone that's been great for a long period of time, we have just cared less and less what anyone else thinks. and more about what is coming through, what are we being told to do by the whatever you call those powers that be. And so the less you give a about what anyone thinks, the more you're completely free. And I think that our journey to freedom has been slow, but ever widening. So I feel like there's no reason why you can't have a pop song like A Sky Full of Stars, which Avicii produced, next to a really indie thing, like there's a song on there called Fly On, which is really gentle and sweet. And so I just feel like all the rules have gradually been thrown out of the window, and that's so fun.
When you discovered that, at the time, it just felt, to your point, so groundbreaking. Like, wow, Coldplay are just on one. They're working with this, and this, and these kind of people, and da-da-da. And now there is this desire, I think, for this cross-pollination genre freedom that you talk about that leads us to a place like Higher Power, which to me almost sounds like 3.5 minutes of all of it.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like all the things we've learned come together in this moment. And it sounds so authentically Coldplay, whereas I do feel like if you tried that even 3 albums ago, it might have been like...
No, there's no way. It's funny, man, because in a strange way, the longer that we've lasted as a band, the less credit you feel you can take for anything.
Yeah.
And within that even is quite a lot of freedom.
That's beautiful, yeah.
So I don't feel any pressure about, oh, you did this, or this sold that, or this, because it's like, well, I'm just being put on earth in this shape to do the band and some other things too, but so I'll just do whatever songs come through, and we should do them to their fullest. When we did A Sky Full of Stars, for example, we tried to do it in an indie way for a bit, but then we're like, nah, let's make it sound like it wants to sound. So with Higher Power, we've been through all those challenges, so it clearly wants to sound
like this,
and we're with the best producer of all time. So so one of the things we said to Max when we were,
does he speak?
Musically flirting.
Does he communicate like normal people, or does he just speak through his music?
He speaks. You have to go through a system of gates, and do certain tests, and then there's a physical exam, and then eventually they open a tunnel, and you get
He's Willy Wonka,
blindfolded.
Right?
Yeah,
he's Willy Wonka.
He's like Willy Wonka, but he's more ripped than Willy.
I hear he's jacked.
And Willy Wonka is not so great on production. We tried working with him. But what was the question again? So with Max. But by the time we came to Max, which has been a long journey towards each other.
Yes.
I think we wanted to get there at the point where we're like, you do your thing.
Yeah.
And we'll do our thing. And if it works, amazing. And if it doesn't, no one loses anything.
So you send him the song, he did his thing, and then you are you there, or are you sort of getting it back? Are you giving him the space to work, or how's that working?
Well, when, Max is our producer right now for anything we do. So just before Higher Power arrived, I'd done a whole session with him auditioning songs for a potential album.
All right.
But Higher Power didn't exist then.
Right.
So we'd been through this whole process of him saying, yes, no, maybe, change this, real...
This is real production shit.
Real Mr. Miyagi stuff.
Yeah, this is, because I think a lot of the times you get the feeling with Max Martin, it goes into the Max Martin world. Doesn't really matter who touches it or how invested he is or not invested. No one really ever knows. This is why, by the way, I'm spending a lot of time on this, is because there's
great. He deserves
there's a lot wrapped up in Max Martin, a lot in his story and who he is, and he's very reticent to ever talk about his craft. And so you imagine that it's going to kind of get swept up in the Max machine and come out sounding incredible. The fact that he's right there next to you and he's actually he's ear testing the songs and...
Yeah, no, I think that for whatever reason, where he is in his life and where we are in ours, it felt really fresh for both parties.
Yeah.
And I think he didn't know if I was going to let him that deeply in, if you see what I mean. And I think that's been, you'd have to ask him, but I think it's been more enjoyable for him than us just saying, here's the song, don't touch it, but add some sparkly stuff. It hasn't been like that at all. It's been very much like, okay, here's the very basics. What do you think? And then we all... So with Higher Power, to answer your actual question, I was here and they were all there, and that song arrived, and so I sent it to them quite quickly.
Yeah.
And then went to meet them.
And went, yay, we got one, and Will was like, you can stay this time.
Yeah. Then he quickly moved on to a song he didn't like.
One of the things I love about the way that you move, actually, if you take a look at the last 10 years of Coldplay, you do have this wonderful contrast with each other, with yourselves, where it's like, we'll make this, but only because it will open a portal to this.
Yeah.
And then we'll make this, but only because it will send us back home to make this.
Yes.
And you seem to love this zigzag approach of like ghost stories, head full of dreams, everyday life, whatever this becomes.
Yes. No, I think it's nice to have a picture frame. To when songs arrive, it's nice to know, well, that might fit in this picture frame.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to bother making an album now in 2021, it should probably be its own entity as a whole, because no one really needs to listen to an album anymore. And the album is quite an outdated concept for most people. We're basically making silent movies, but that's what we love doing. And Charlie Chaplin, when he made The Great Dictator, everyone was making talkies at that point. But he's like, no, this is supposed to be a silent movie. In a way, albums are like silent movies.
I don't know. I sort of, I think that was maybe a few years ago, that was a loud conversation. I can't help but feel that we've gone back to a space where if an artist is truly invested in a body of work, something that you really have to say, because it comes from you. It doesn't matter whether I think an album's outdated or not. You want to make it. You're not satisfied doing it this way, or this way. In this particular case, you got to make it like this because you want to say something that lasts this long in this format, and it's fun to dress it up and it's track listed and put art on it, and it's the fun shit.
Very fun. Yeah.
It's the fun shit, right? And if you're having fun, isn't really at the core of the trade, I'm having fun? Like, don't I just want you to be having fun?
No, I don't. I've never agreed with that thing of like, well, I don't not agree because people should believe what they want to believe. I've never been into that thing of like, we like it, so that's great. And if anyone else likes it, that's a bonus. I feel like we care about what both parties think. Or does that mean, I would never want us to be willfully obtuse.
No, okay, I get that.
But I do believe that if you're super into something and you connect with it emotionally, then some other human might do too.
How are you, for yourself personally at this point in your life now, finding a balance between building a life that you can be at peace in and learn and be a human being versus being Chris Martin in the band Coldplay and all of the sort of craziness that comes with that? How is that work-life balance, if you can call it work, the holistic experience for you
it's
right
not
now?
work, it's just what I do.
Yeah.
I think that all the stuff about being in a famous band or all this or all that, I think if a worldwide pandemic teaches you anything, it's that you don't want to get any delusions of grandeur or think that you're better that you're better because you're famous or you're better because you're whatever. I think that, I just feel like this is the gift I got given and that's what I do. And I don't think anymore about, did we make it? Are we famous? Are we this or that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, that's clearly bullshit. I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing, whether anyone's listening or not. As long as I can afford to do that. Even if I was working somewhere else, I'd still be going home and doing songs. So I think that if you go back 400 years, for example, someone who did my job was right at the bottom of the social ladder in the king's court or whatever. The musicians are like the dregs and the actors. And it might be that we're heading back that way. Movie stars don't get paid $100 million anymore unless you're The Rock, who's respect.
By the way, deserves every cent.
He deserves every cent. But dealing with being this or being that, it's inconsequential. It's like, this is the human body that I'm in is supposed to be a singer and a bit of a dad and a bit of a partner and a bit of someone who tries to plant trees or something. And I'm not really answering. I know I'm being remarkably vague. This is not TikTok friendly.
No, I think you did answer it. I mean, I think that it actually answered it really nicely in the sense that you've been able to separate yourself from all of that ambition and all that sort of like construct of what is of value. That's what you're trying to do, is just separate yourself from that. That it's not really what motivates you.
Yeah, I mean, I want to play to loads of people because it's so fun. And there's part of me that loves the fact that we made it and stuff. But the main part of me is like, well, everything has been given to you, everything. even the bit that works hard on the songs you're given, even that was given to you.
Yeah.
So you can't really take credit for anything or for anything. So at this point, I just feel like so blessed and lucky to be doing what I'm doing, and I want to do it as much and as well as possible.
You know, at some point shows are gonna happen, and you know, you said something really interesting and poignant before about everyday life and the reasons why you didn't want to tour it, and being the environmental concern being one of them. And it's a really hard question because I want to see my favorite bands live, and but whenever my friends turn around and sort of say to me, "Wow, you know, the environmental impact of touring," I'm like, "Yeah, but you know, my favorite band isn't responsible for coming up with an alternative energy source in order to allow fossil fuels from being burnt." And so I don't really know what the answer is, but I know it concerns you.
I feel like the role of art, as well as in and of itself giving people pleasure or catharsis, as well as that, art has always played a role in dragging the mainstream, the way things work forward. Elton John coming out definitely helped the move towards any sexuality being okay.
Definitely.
Michael Jackson definitely, the Jackson 5 definitely put people of different skin color into a lot of white people's homes that, you know, and made it, you know, see what I mean? So there are things that...
Even Kurt Cobain and you know, the conversation around mental health.
Exactly. He's like, oh, okay, because if you went back 60 years and you said, oh, I'm depressed, people would laugh at you.
Yeah.
So I think that the artistic community is not going to be able to change anything on their own, of course, but you have to at least show that you care. So in planning this next tour, whenever that's possible, since we said we're not going to tour until we can do it much greener and cleaner, the blessing of that was so many people approached us to say, well, we build this and we do that and we do this. So when we're ready to announce a tour, we will be able to announce this is what's different environmentally. There's still this much to go.
But what a learning curve.
Yeah, and it's been amazing. But in diving into it, there's no way back, because there's no way we could now put a tour on in the old way, knowing what we know.
Yeah.
But similarly, there's also a side of us that you could still criticize, because we still want to go on tour, and it's still going to not be perfect environmentally. But I feel like if artists don't at least try, you know, why would it be trendy for anyone else to? Trendy, of course, is a word that has not been trendy for many years. I'm trying to bring that back.
Wow, it must be one of those situations where being privy to that much information in order to try and find the best solution exposes you to the truth in ways that you didn't even imagine was possible. But the reality, was it harder to hear than even you could have imagined?
Yeah, you know, I flew back from England yesterday and I felt guilty.
Yeah.
The finding of a clean aviation fuel is I don't know, I'd say of all the things we're trying to work out, that's probably number one right now.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to play in Brazil if you don't go to Brazil. It's much harder. So yeah. So it's an ongoing thing, but it's exciting. There's some things which we've seen which are like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So I think that touring and stuff will get a lot cleaner for a lot of people.